Welcome to Challenges with Engaging Sessional Faculty in EdTech. I'm Dr. Victoria Chen from University of Guelph-Humber in Toronto, Canada. My role is the Academic Technology Specialist, where I help faculty, students, and staff with EdTech needs. I first created this session with the intent to document my first year in this role, as I started last October in 2019. But what I didn't anticipate was how much the world would change during this time. So let me pull up my PowerPoint and I'll show you what we'll be going over today. So the overview of topics. First, I'm going to talk about the challenges we had with engaging sessional faculty, the research I had conducted, and the various activities we did to get feedback from both faculty, students, and just on EdTech in general at the institution. And then when COVID happened, how everything changed our plans that we were going to go forward with. And then the third phase is where we are now. So EdTech and how it's the new normal in basically all of our lives. So to begin, I'm going to go over how we identify challenges. So a lot of the things came from the nature of the institution, things I had heard, having conversations with people, but then I also want to get some real data. So I conducted an environmental scan with faculty using a survey within my first week of working here. And then we also did some events to reach out to students to get their thoughts on how EdTech could help them in learning and in the classroom as well as at home. And then we also did a community of practice where I engaged faculty and staff monthly just to discuss how things are going, new projects, where we could be going forward. So let's take a look at what I found. The University of Guelph-Humber is located in Toronto, Canada. It's in partnership with University of Guelph and Humber College, where students earn both a degree and diploma for 4 years of study. 50% of the sessional faculty come from Guelph, and the other 50% from Humber. These sessional faculty teach 1 to 2 courses here, which means they are limited on time and the amount of effort they can put into the course. So how do we engage sessional faculty in EdTech when that requires them to put in extra amount of time and effort, something they don't have? I conducted an environmental scan. This was a survey sent out to faculty to gauge what EdTech they were using. The most common response was projecting PowerPoint to the screen and annotating on the dry erase board that was available in the classroom. Some just lectured and didn't provide any notes to students. And if they didn't teach online courses, most of them didn't even use the LMS available to them, which wasn't great for universal design. Furthermore, faculty stated that it would be nice if EdTech could help students collaborate more, invite guest speakers in virtually, and provide feedback on assignment submissions digitally. Also to annotate and have it recorded, as well as recording lectures for those who could not attend, but most importantly, not take up too much of their time to implement or learn. For student feedback, we held an IT event on how EdTech can improve their learning experience. Students told us that they wanted more flexible learning, being able to watch recorded or even live stream lectures from home when they can't make it to class, and have a better group work experience by using technology. With this feedback, I started a community of practice, meeting monthly with faculty and staff. We came up with some ideas on how to show faculty EdTech capabilities, such as webinars, documents on the tools, in-person workshops to live demo EdTech, and create a drop-in space for question and answers. As we got things rolling, suddenly the whole world shut down. So really overnight, EdTech went from a nice to have to a need to have. The Friday that our school shut down, by Monday morning, faculty needed to have their courses completely online. And everything needed to be virtual. Students need to get the instructions. And then we were really in the last few weeks of school. So what the faculty wanted was just resources and support documents. So this all happened in March of 2020 this year, where the instructions on how to teach their next class, really on that Monday, had to be created within hours and sent to faculty. So these were instructional texts, guides, and short videos that I just put together on the various tools and platforms that we had in place that they could use. And everyone was dealing with the onset of the pandemic, and nothing was sure, and no one wanted to engage in any live webinar sessions. So we didn't do that, which was kind of part of the plan going forward. All the faculty wanted was something practical, things we can just throw online right now and just get the course done, because they were just weeks away from completing the course, and for some students, even graduation. So when the last few weeks ended, we did another survey for the summer term. So we had a bit of a breather. And so all of these faculty had taught in the winter term. And this was really because we're a sessional institution. Those who don't teach in the summer, they no longer had access to their emails. So we really only had this cohort to kind of survey, get the landscape of how that end of winter term was and what they needed from us for summer to begin. So what they commented on was kind of the sync formats versus the async formats. And so the sync formats, they use virtual classroom, which is part of our LMS Brightspace or D2L, and then Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and web. And so with these various platforms, they all use very similar features. So they wanted the screen share desktop, maybe show your PowerPoint, documents, websites. Some did program-specific software, so they could still show how to use Adobe, use SPSS. They were able to record the lectures for those who couldn't make it during that live session or had internet issues. They could annotate on the whiteboard. They could file share, have a chat function if audio didn't work. And then students were also able to share their webcam or their desktop with the instructor and other students, so they could do presentations, which was a big thing for the last few weeks of school. And then the large group, small group breakout room features in a couple of the platforms were also very helpful for faculty. And then doing group work for students, so students used Teams on their own, and they were able to do the group work in order to finish the course. And then others continued their labs just online. So instead of being in the computer labs, doing Photoshop, using Adobe, using SPSS, Excel, they were now able to just do it online in Teams or Zoom. So with the async format, this really meant that Brightspace or D2L became your online classroom. And so in this classroom, this is what would be replicating kind of their in-person, like the four walls of a classroom. So here they had discussion boards to keep the discussions going. If instructors didn't want to do a live discussion, for instance, they could view the PowerPoints that were done on a live lecture. Some did voiceover PowerPoints. They were able to do group work assignments within Brightspace as well. They could submit work digitally instead of going through emails back and forth. Everything was in one place, and it was also secure. They were able to grade digitally, which was something that they did want, and some of the feedback we talked about kind of before COVID had happened. And they were able to type it up, send it instead of writing it on the hard copies of their assignments. There were quizzes. They were able to do proctored exams within Brightspace. So we have Respondus, which worked really well. And then we have videos from libraries that could act as micro teaching or just additional information, digital textbooks, and journal articles. So the challenges that were reported from faculty and from the feedback they heard from their students at the end of winter term was faculty and students with Wi-Fi issues, computer and device compatibility for the different platforms or exams. Some didn't have computers at all, and there was really a learning curve to using the tools and platforms. So going forward, we really want to limit the number of platforms and tools that we recommended, and so that we could support those really well instead of instructors going off and using kind of other platforms that we couldn't support or couldn't help. And neither Humber or Guelph would support either. So we really wanted to make sure that we had a handful of tools and platforms that worked really well. But overall, teaching and learning online was very positive from what we heard from both the faculty and the students. So with this feedback and the feedback from before COVID, we started to plan how we were going to support the sessional faculty in the fall. Because we had already announced that in the fall, we were going to be moving completely online, or what we called alternative delivery. So the university decided to hire instructors a bit earlier than they did in past years. And this gave us more time to be able to support the faculty, especially ones who had never taught online, who were nervous. They had the option to kind of reach out and then meet with us. We also developed a lot of documents on available tools, the platforms that we supported, the pros and cons of each platform, so that the instructor can feel that they could make a good decision that would fit for them. I also constructed a blog, a website, webinars, and a consultation checklist in order to make sure that we covered everything with every faculty member. So the conversations with fall sessional workers, these were faculty who also worked at companies during the summer. So as soon as classes ended, a lot of their work kind of moved online, just like the rest of us who were working from home. And so a lot of them had become very familiar with some type of platform for video conferencing. From Zoom to Teams to Google Hangouts, the platforms may be different, but the functions were very similar. It was a lot of the things that I had mentioned on the sync slide, which was sharing their screen, just video chatting, being able to type in your chats, things like that. And so in talking with faculty, I really capitalized on their work experience and emphasized similarities and transferable skills, not only for them if they're kind of learning a new tool here, but also for their students, because their students, once they graduate, they're likely going to be using these platforms as well. And so there is a huge benefit for why we're using these platforms and how their type of learning is going to transfer into kind of work experience that they can take forward. And another big thing was that even those who didn't work in other places, who kind of just only taught at other institutions, going virtual really became the normal. And this was for communicating with family and friends. Everyone was doing it. All the celebrities were doing it. There were Zoom calls, there was a bunch of videos, and you could see how fun and interactive and meaningful it was. And it wasn't what instructors or students may have thought previously of online learning, that it's more of like a correspondence course and everything's just thrown online and you're just reading text. Like, it really can be interactive, and it's, worth investing your time and effort into this new platform. So for fall 2020, EdTech really became the new normal. So this was a chart that I shared with faculty for them to decide what platform they would like to use. So we support all four, but one of the biggest issues with kind of our specific faculty and students was the internet and Wi-Fi. So we did kind of talk with IT, and we recommended what kind of systems they should be using, the minimum requirement for Wi-Fi. If students, for instance, couldn't get on Wi-Fi, would faculty be able to accommodate them with like an async type of format? But with regards to Wi-Fi, a big thing was the bandwidth, and WebEx turned out to be the worst one for our specific needs, as we needed a hardwired device to be able to use it seamlessly. And most people were using kind of the Wi-Fi and using their laptops or their phones, and WebEx just wasn't working for our specific needs. We have a lot of students who don't live in kind of big cities, and so their internet is spotty. And those who use WebEx kind of over the winter and the summer really had negative comments about it. And so for that reason, we didn't really recommend it for the fall. The one that really stood out, though, was Zoom. And the instructor said it was just easy to find resources online. It was very intuitive to use the device. And so we've integrated it into our Brightspace, and that way to add in more security and avoid Zoom bombings. Teams was really great for smaller lectures, virtual labs, and group work. So a lot of instructors were already familiar with Teams in their other workplaces and wanted to just continue using Teams, which was completely fine with us. For virtual classroom, some of them had used it in the past and just wanted to continue using it. We did warn them about once it's recorded, because of the type of file it's under, some students had issues with opening it up, and that might be just something to consider when they're looking at the different platforms. So we did a lot of consultations and webinars over the summer. As of right now, we've done over 130 of them for fall instructors. This was mostly through video conferencing on the platform that they would be using, so either Zoom or Teams mostly. There were also phone calls. There was also group virtual coaching sessions for Teams and Zoom, where I walked them through the two platforms, kind of comparison, the differences, which platform really would just suit their needs, and what platform they were just comfortable with, even like their personal preference. And so that would be the one that we would set up for them to use for the fall. We hosted live and then recorded those webinars that were on best practices for teaching in alternative format. So assessments, async versus sync lectures, materials, and how it's best to have a mix of them and not just kind of one format over the other, as long as you're comfortable with that. We do have some instructors who went completely async and just did voice over PowerPoints, but for their kind of question and answer period or office hours, they would do that live. And that really is kind of like the live component they have for that course. So recordings really was mostly voice over PowerPoint, maybe a video of the faculty lecturing. Some did in their gardens or like on a walk. A very short, kind of 5-10 minute video. Might have even a guest speaker. And recordings were now really being embraced compared to before, where it seemed like extra work. As I said, the micro lectures were now being viewed not as something extra or a huge production. They didn't need to reach out to our AV staff or IT in order to come bring a camera over and audio and things like that. They were just recording on their laptop or on their phone, just like what I'm doing now. And the students were able to watch these micro lectures before a live discussion, or even if it's a completely like recorded full lecture, they could rewatch it later on. And now universal design really became a lot easier for staff. Let's move my camera up there. So they were able to rewatch videos, platforms, had automatically kind of closed captioned all of the material, and it was a huge benefit to everyone, and it didn't require any extra work on the instructor's part, which was not true for when we were in class, and a lot of closed captioning had to be done kind of through a third party, and students had to wait, and not everyone had access to that information. Now everyone can have access to it. We also had them consider both sync and async components, how this would help with students' learning as well as their teaching, how to be more flexible and adaptable during this time. Really, this time kind of showed us that anything can happen, things are unpredictable, and a lot of times we just need to adapt and just go with the flow. And that really helped with instructors embracing EdTech. It also helped them reconsider ways to do assessments, considering tech issues as well as accommodations, and maybe not be so rigid in saying everything must be a timed quiz at this time because of internet issues or tech issues. And instructors kind of were more able to give them kind of an open book exam or maybe a project instead of a timed exam. So students really had the time to think about their responses and answers and kind of go through it and then give kind of their best work. Faculty were also more willing to take the time to learn a lot of the ed tech, and they could see how easy it came. So a lot of lessons that we learned was it was important for ed tech and really any innovative kind of procedure that we want to go forward with needed to go from a nice to have to a need to have. So what we heard from faculty was no longer, it would be nice if this could happen. They were now saying, well, I need this to happen. And is it possible? And for most of the things they wanted to do, like group work, discussions, breakout rooms, that was all possible using our platforms. So sessional instructors really need to see EdTech as part of teaching and learning and not an additional component. It also shouldn't be limited to in-person connections. In all of our discussions and kind of like that pre-COVID time, we had focused so much on how are we going to get faculty to come on campus. They're only here for those 3 hours when they're teaching. Could we kind of do more parties or coffee times or meet and greets? Would that bring them in more to learn EdTech? Well, now we've kind of broadened our horizons and thought more about kind of online webinars. And so they can join at home or just watch our recorded sessions. And this reaches out to more people than what we try to do just on campus. We needed to be more flexible and adaptable, as well as the instructors and students. Also combining sync and async components, so having both live as well as recorded things, and having kind of the option of having video instructions that instructors can watch over and over again, as well as send to their students, and not just have to rely on us being like guest speakers or trying to kind of be on demand and helping students and faculty. So through documents, webinars, we also emphasize the transferable skills from one platform to another, and that all of their efforts wasn't wasted, that what they learned here and whether they teach again here can be transferred to another institution or another workplace. So now, after I've told you kind of my first year, all of the experiences I had with instructors at University of Guelph-Humber, I want you to take a moment and kind of just reflect on 3 things you could take away from this session. What could you do right now to help your sessional faculty to embrace EdTech? These could be 3 kind of concrete things that you could do right away, or maybe 3 things that you could see in the future. And if you have any questions, you can email me at victoria.chen@guelphumber.ca. I also have an EdTech blog that I update weekly with tips on teaching and learning, incorporating EdTech. A lot of it does have to do with our Brightspace, or at our institution, we call it CourseLink, but also we talk about Zoom, Teams, and various other platforms, and just tips and tricks in general. So thank you so much for joining me, and have a great day.